we're going. So sweet. So I guess just tell us a little bit about who you are, because I'm not really a basic question person of like, where are you from whenever I'm getting to know somebody.
Right.
So just who is Sister Mary Claire?
Well, my full religious name is Sister Mary Claire of the Holy Family, and I grew up in Nashville, Tennessee. I have one brother. I grew up kind of like best of both worlds. We grew up on a dairy farm in the middle of the city because the city grew up around us. So I had kind of a unique, childhood experience with both sides of that. It was great. And then went to Catholic school for grade school and high school with the Nashville Dominicans, and then went on to Franciscan University of Steubenville for college. And then from Steubenville, I went and did a year of mission work with SOLT. So yeah, so that's a little bit about my growing up years.
Yeah. And then kind of tell us a little bit about like SOLT, how that got started. What does SOLT stand for? All the
Yeah,
things.
so SOLT is the Society of Our Lady of the Most Holy Trinity, and we were founded in 1958 by Father James Flanagan in New Mexico. So we're relatively young in the church comparative to, like Dominicans or Franciscans. One of the unique things about our community is that we have all the vocations. So we have priests and we have sisters and we have laity, we have lay families, we have brothers. So that's, and our charism is that we go and we serve in areas of deepest apostolic need. So as a team. So our founder saw, even in the 1950s, that there was a real challenge with family life. And he said that as our part of our charism was to witness that gift of family life and bring that to the church, which was kind of unique because it was pre-Vatican II. So we're one of the first communities. There are other communities now that have all the vocations, but we were one of the earliest ones. And so our spirituality is Marian Trinitarian. So we have a deep devotion to Our Lady, deep devotion to the consecration through St. Louis de Montfort. And then we desire to bring all peoples in union with Jesus and Mary. There's a kind of a story of our, so we have a founder and a co-founder, Father Jim Flanagan, Father James McHugh. So they were both World War II veterans. Father Jim was a frogman during World War II, was getting like the bombs out as they were going into the beaches of Normandy. And Father John was shot down several times, like just these like larger than life men. And there again, one of the bonuses of being in a young community is you get to know the founders. And there's a story of Father Jim went to New Mexico to found the community, and Father John was there. And so the bishop, said, you need to meet each other. And when their mothers met each other, one of them said to the other one, I don't remember which one it was, said, oh, I don't know. Hopefully your son can kind of like bring my son down to earth, because they think they can convert the whole world. And he's like, that's what my son says too. So it's kind of that mentality, like we were supposed to bring everyone to communion with the Lord. So yeah, so that's a little, but been around 1958. Our headquarters are here in Corpus Christi, which is where I am. And then we have missions all over the world. So we're in Belize and Mexico and about 5 or 6 different places in the United States. We're in the Philippines, Australia, all over.
Yeah. So like, how have you seen the charism kind of grow and just lived out throughout the years since you've joined or since you've just first encountered SOLT?
What really drew me to SOLT was that family aspect of when I got to North Dakota, and I went to North Dakota to try to get the vocation thing out of my system. I was like, I'll give God a year and go on my way. And that was one of the first things that really struck me, was that they had all the vocations, which was really amazing to me. But then just that they were really like a family. They really we love each other like family. So you've got the teasing that goes on, but also the deep friendships and the deep love and respect. And we pray together, and our meals are whether we're eating with a priest or we're eating as just as sisters, we eat in common. So we talk during our meals. A lot of communities don't do that. Just to build that, deeper relationship with each other. And then from that, we're able to help each other too in our spiritual life too. So, and one of the things that we do, I guess, along with that, we have liturgy prep and spiritual exercises. So both of those spiritual exercises are written by our founder, and then liturgy prep is we read the readings for the next day and reflect and share on those with each other. So we receive gifts from each person too as they receive from the Lord. So
it's really beautiful to see of just that community aspect, because we're just all made for community and relationship, and just having that, I think, is just so key, whether that's in silence at meals like the Benedictines, or just in common, just chatting it up over a meal like y'all do. So it's an amazing thing. And so kind of looking at the discernment process for you, kind of what made you say yes to enter from that initial, like, okay, I'll give God a year and go to North Dakota. So what was that for you?
If I had to summarize it into one word, I'd say I was home. I had kind of wrestled with vocation for years. I mean, I think probably I would say my first tug of being called was in like 7th grade, because I was blessed to be in Catholic schools. I mean, I knew my faith well. My family, we went to mass on Sundays together, and prayed together and before meals, and so it was always part of my Catholic faith was always part of my life. But really, that call was just it's more like just like the Lord just drawing me, and I knew He was drawing me to something deeper. And then I always, because I grew up with the Dominicans, I always just kind of assumed like, well, if I'm going to be a sister, I'll be a Dominican. But when I went to Franciscan and I didn't really realize there were so many different orders and so many different, it's like it's so beautiful. The church is so beautiful because there's an order basically for every need and for every spirituality that, out there. So, which is a huge blessing. And so when I met SOLT, really, I met them my freshman year of college, but I didn't really know anything about the community and the next year I met the sisters. But I just felt this sense of like, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is home. And not everybody has that experience. That's a pretty common experience. But I know I've talked to some sisters like, oh, I didn't feel that way right away. But it was just a grace that the Lord, I think, knew that I needed, because I needed that sense of like, this is where I belong, because I'm really slow at like responding. So yeah, He has to draw me into it. So
we always want that just clear, audible voice of just here, stay.
Right.
This is for you.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I know. Also in high school, I prayed for a 2x4, and I was like, maybe I need to go bigger than a 2x4. But he doesn't do that, because He's God and He's gentle with us. So
yeah. He's got a sense of humor.
Right. For sure.
And so whenever you entered, what were the stages of formation? Because I know some orders are just postulancy, novitiate, simple vows, final vows. So what is those stages of formation? And then kind of how does the discernment look like as you go through the stages? Does it intensify or look any different as you're discerning the order and the order's discerning you?
Oh, great question. So it starts with the initial inquiries and come and see visits, which I did a couple of come and see visits through college. And then a lot for our community ends up people volunteer for a year, which is not a requirement, but for both our initial stages for the men and the women, they end up a year in a mission. So a year in North Dakota or Texas or Belize. So like I said, I did a year of mission work, and it wasn't a process. Part of my discernment, like I said, it was a way to get out of it. But then the next year I entered our first stage is aspirancy. And so that's 6 months to a year. And it's, you're just living with the sisters. It's basically, I guess, 6 months come and see. You're living with the sisters, you're working right alongside the sisters and whatever their apostolates are. The only exterior thing that's different is the women wear skirts. And then, that one's very free. Like you can leave at any time. But it's still, you have classes and you still have, with the aspirant servant, in our community, we don't call our superiors, we call them servants, because it's really what they do. So our aspirant servant, you would meet with her periodically throughout that time. And then if it's discerned, like I like how you pointed out, on both sides to go on. The next stage is postulancy. And postulancy for me was in New Mexico. And so it's a year-long process. And the exterior change is a gray skirt and a white shirt. And it tends to be a little bit more contemplative because we are a contemplative active community. And so you have to learn a lot. I mean, it's hard when you're going from the world entering to learn how to be silent and how to listen and how to enter into prayer. And so that's a lot of the where I'm a postulancy step is that of just learning all those different things. Not a whole lot different from aspirancy, but quieter. And then novitiate, we have a 2-year novitiate. Some communities just have one. So we have two. One year is a contemplative year, 1 year is an active year. So the contemplative year, again, is you're pulled back from mission work and you're focused on classes. And a lot of the classes are on the vows, are on our constitutions, because each community has different constitutions and rules that they follow. So there's classes specifically for that. And then the active year is there again, basically just living the life that you would live once you're vowed, once you take your vows. And then there again, there's freedom on all of those stages to leave or stay or discern and what's beautiful with the church, like there's freedom that sometimes women need a little bit longer. And so they might leave and go to a mission for a little bit longer, or get, if they need counseling help or something, and they leave, but or come back, so it's really beautiful that how God just, he's the formator. And so each person's might look slightly different. And I've always been grateful that for that, there is that freedom there. So after the novitiate is vows, to take temporary vows. And for our community, we take temporary vows each year for 5 years. And then after that 5 years, then you take final vows. So,
yeah. And so it's awesome just hearing how contemplative it is. I was talking with Father David Michael Moses a couple of weeks ago, and he kind of talked about his formation and how you immediately just want to go into the vocation, you're pulled back in formation so that you can actually just contemplate, am I here for the right reasons? Am I actually here to serve God and the church, instead of just for my own pride of just wanting to wear the habit or just wanting to be seen serving. So I think it's a really beautiful thing that y'all do.
And it builds a very strong foundation, because it builds that foundation so you can go back. And once you're in the missions for a while, you're rooted. You have those roots of prayer and knowing your community well, and things that you're like, oh, I need to go back to this. I need to root myself again here. So yeah, it's a short amount of time, really, it seems like, but so, I mean, it's life-changing. So
yeah, for sure. And so while you kind of discerned prior to entering, did you discern any other orders? Because I know you talked about being around the Nashville Dominicans and being around the Franciscans. So did you look at any other orders?
The Nashville Dominicans, I did very closely. I have very close friends that are sisters there, and all my teachers through grade school and high school. So I was and I still feel like I'm very Dominican formed, and just in a way that, that was my Dominican education background. So, and I was actually prepared to enter after high school. I was ready. I was like, this is God's called me to be a sister, and with all the zeal of an 18-year-old, and so I told my parents, and didn't go over so well. So to compromise with my parents, I agreed to go to Franciscan for a year, and when I got to Franciscan, I realized that I wasn't anywhere near ready, that I had a lot of intellectual formation. Like I knew the faith really well, but I didn't have a deep relationship with the Lord. And I really came to this realization that my whole relationship with the Lord focused in on my vocation. Like every prayer was, what am I supposed to do, Lord? Like, just, tell me what I'm supposed to do, instead of just growing in relationship with him. And And I distinctly remember that day of like realizing that, like, oh my gosh, I need to step back from, what's the rest of my life going to look like, and look at like, who am I today? Like, who is God calling me to be today? And what's my relationship look like with him? So when I did that, is my spring of my freshman year. And it's funny because God's, sense of humor right around that same time is when I'm at SOLT. But I'd already been like, I'm not discerning. I'm just, and then, you're 18, like swing the other way. I'm totally not discerning. I'm going to get married, So, I definitely was all over the place, but, at Franciscan it was just a great blessing because there's tons of different communities around. So I got to know a lot of different communities, but I never really visited any. I got to know the Franciscan Sisters of the Martyr St. George really well. There's Franciscan Sisters TOR that are there on campus. There's other communities that would just show up randomly, which was great because it's just the church. But there again, none of them really were, I don't know. I think God there again knew that if he gave me too many choices, I would just be overwhelmed because I tend to be indecisive. So, but when I met SOLT, there was something different. And I met one of the brothers in the community first, and we just kept in contact. So that was my freshman year. Throughout that year, just as friends, the funny part of the story was my next door neighbor, Nettie, she knew the brothers in the community, and they had just come up to visit for a random weekend. And she came over to my room that night and she said, will you go with me to talk to Brother Scott? Because if you go, he won't ask me about my vocational discernment. So I was the buffer. She's now married with 4 kids, and here I am. So, so I did, and I just had this grace conversation with one of my brothers, and so we kept in contact. And then that following year, I was in Austria for the study abroad program, and was in Rome, and I met the sisters. And there again, it was just one of those, like, I knew I was home. But there again, that was my sophomore year. So I still knew that I needed to come to a deeper relationship with the Lord before I could do anything like vocational wise. Like, I needed to know myself, and I needed to know who God is, and that he loves me, and all those beautiful things that we need in that foundational relationship with him. So.
Yeah, for sure. And that's amazing to hear. Just there's so many orders just for everybody.
Yeah.
You just find your niche.
Yeah.
You're actually called to a religious life, from just all sides of the spectrum, from just monasticism to active to right in the middle. It's a beautiful thing to see. And I didn't know like there are so many more orders around Franciscan. Like, I knew the TORs were there just from talks with friends that go to Franciscan, or just seeing talks given at Franciscan conferences and things like that. But I didn't know there were that many orders just popping in.
And they have a vocations fair every year. Some colleges have career fairs. Franciscan has a vocations fair. So, and that's when you're like, I didn't know there's so many orders, because there's like, I don't know, 50 or 60 different communities and dioceses that come in to promote vocations. They don't really get a huge turnout because nobody really wants anybody else to know that you're discerning, but it's awesome to see them on campus. So that was one of my first realizations, like, there's so many communities out there. I had no idea, but it is beautiful. But the other, like, I think the Lord also, he doesn't want to make it painful for anybody. So oftentimes you'll see, or at least when I hear people's vocation stories, it's, people that are in somebody's life. It's rare that you have somebody that just, finds them on the internet, or doesn't have some sort of initial development of a relationship with the community first. So
it's just crazy how God works.
It is.
It's just mind-blowing to me sometimes. And so and so you talked a little bit about you talking with your parents initially. Kind of, how did that conversation go, and then how did it go the second time around?
Well, it's funny. The initial conversation was not good at all, and my parents would agree with that it was very, very painful. So I was a senior in high school, sorry. And they were like, well, you're too young, you are afraid of life, you need to experience the college life. Um and I think it was true that I was afraid of life, that it wasn't that I was very scared of going off to college because you hear all these crazy stories. And so I was really wrestled, because at that point I was 17 or 18. I was like, okay, where's this honor your father and mother, and then where's, but God is calling me to this. So what do I do? And I talked to actually a couple of Dominican sisters at my high school, and they are the ones that actually told me about Franciscan. And I came to this kind of realization, like, I just want to pursue holiness, and that the vocation will come. And if I'm pursuing holiness, then I'm not going to be doing anything that's going to endanger my vocation in that sense. So my parents, it took them a while, but there again, that sophomore year of college, when I was in Austria, my parents came over at the end of the semester, and we kind of toured around, and we were in Rome, and I wanted them to meet SOLT. There again, I wasn't really wasn't totally on my radar that I was going to be a sister, but they had made this impression with me, and I kind of knew, it was like when the Lord allowed, like, they just loved the community. It's like, oh, okay, well, file this away. Like, the Lord's doing something here. And then when I finally entered there, that had been 5 years later. They had adjusted to the idea, and they knew that, and I had kind of honored their ask of going to college. And then I spent a year in mission work, and then they saw how happy I was with the community, especially after that year of mission in North Dakota. And so it was still hard. It's just me and my brother. And I think any vocation is hard when the child begins to live their vocation and they're not at home, especially if they're not in the same state or the same town. And so then, but there again, when I entered and they saw how happy I was, that made a big difference. And then they were, and I don't remember telling them this, but evidently at some point I said, because they were bemoaning the fact of not having grandchildren. So, well, you just adopt our community. And my mom brought it up just last summer, and she's like, yeah. And they really did do that. So they really have adopted the community. They're getting, our community's unique in kind of the sense that parents can visit whenever. And we have a lot of contact with our families. So they feel very close to the community. So that helps a lot. So
for sure. So how do you kind of advise young women who are kind of scared to tell their parents, like, hey, I want to go live this vocation and just not have children?
Yeah. I think it's a lot of prayer. Pray for your parents before you tell them. Ask their guardian angels to kind of prepare the way. And then, and I think it's to explain, like, why someone feels called or what, because it is such a mystery. And especially in our culture today, it's radical. It's a radical life. And I think to point to the fact of, like, it is a good thing. Like, it's good. It's not like we're going and doing something crazy here. So that we want to give all to the Lord. I think that's a big part of it. And I think also if the person has the community or knows what community, it's important to bring the parents into that relationship too, is to introduce them to the community. If they can't go visit them, at least show them videos, or maybe have a sister or the priest call, if they're open to that, and talk to them about it. And I know that helped my parents a lot. When I was that year in mission work in North Dakota, my parents came to visit, and so they saw the community in action, and they realized, like, okay, this is who she's made for. Like, this is what she's made for. So I think that's important, and to be patient with them, because it is usually not, at least today, it's not something that's on parents' radar that this might be a possibility. So
sure. And so kind of what I think is, like, kind of the starting a transformation in religious life throughout the stages of formations, and it's getting your religious name. So how did that come about for you? Did you just sit down with your superior and just go through the Bible, women names, and just be like, Sister Mary Claire, that's what I want? make it
Right.
happen.
Right. Well, it's funny because that was not on my radar of what I wanted. So most communities, and our community does this too. You submit 3 names,
Mhm.
and then depending on, usually it's the superior that chooses. Our founder was still alive when I had received my name, so our founder picked my name. And some sisters were very bold and just like, let Father Flanagan choose your name. I'm not that bold yet. I don't know about that. So my baptismal name is Claire. I was named for my grandmother. And so, but I never liked it growing up. I hope she doesn't watch the video, but Claire wasn't my favorite name because it's old school, you know, and when I was growing up, people didn't have, there was nobody else that had that name. But so when I entered, I always thought I was going to change my name, and I had all these different ideas. I really wanted Talitha, like when Jesus calls the little girl Talitha Cum. And then I got to know Rishet, and it gets closer and closer, and I'm praying over it. And I just knew I was supposed to keep Claire. And then when we enter, so we don't actually receive our names until first vows. Some communities you receive them when you become a novice, but when we become a novice, we receive the name of Mary. And so, and then as we have our classes on choosing your name, one of the things that our founder really pointed out is like, you need to live your name. You need to live not only who the saint was, but also the meaning of your name. So Claire means clear and bright. And it's like, oh, I struggle living that name. I don't need to take on somebody else's name. But then I also, we can take a title. We don't have to, but we can. So when I was praying through those, I had 2 picked out. Sister Mary Claire of Divine Love and Sister Mary Claire of the Child Jesus in honor of Saint Therese. Divine Love, I just liked the title. And then so I was praying, and we had to write a letter asking permission to profess vows, and then a letter explaining our choices of our names. So I'd written this huge long list of like why I really wanted Sister Mary Claire of the Child Jesus in honor of Saint Therese. And then I had this like smaller paragraph about divine love. And then I was praying in adoration. I like the name Sister Mary Claire of the Holy Family. And so what I wrote, my whole explanation of that was, and I've also thought of the name Sister Mary Claire of the Holy Family. But so that was it. But it's so like God, because my holy card we have holy cards we can give out at first vows. And my holy card I picked out was the Holy Family. Like everything in my life was Holy Family. I just never registered. So it was like really perfect. Like God knew that that's the name I needed, and he just didn't explain it to me. So that was it.
Yeah, very just simple. Just this is nice.
Yeah, right. And that's how it goes with the Lord with me. Like I just need it. I need it really straightforward.
Yeah. So. And so those temporary vows that y'all take, is the kind of the ceremony different than the final vows, or is it pretty much the same? Okay.
It's the same. Yeah. Other than the words change. Instead of saying, for 1 year, you say for all my life. So,
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So what was your day of final profession like?
It was beautiful. I guess there is a difference. We receive the scapular that I'm wearing, and then we now receive a ring. So that's a little bit of a change, but it was beautiful. My dad had passed away in June of 2012 was when I made my final vows. And I was hoping that he was going to make it. He had cancer, and I was hoping he was going to be able to make it for my final vows. So my final vows were August 5th. And he didn't, but I had asked permission to have, and this was very unique permission. You don't normally get this. There again, he's just so good to his brides and gave me what I wanted. So thinking that my dad was going to make it, I had asked permission to profess vows in Nashville. We don't have a mission in Nashville. We're not anywhere in the Southeast. And I received permission to have it at my home parish. And so thinking that my dad was going to live. So when my dad passed away, I just said, can we just still keep it the same? I knew it was going to be a smaller ceremony because the whole community is not there. But what was beautiful is my whole family was there. And so, and most of my family had never seen a profession. Many of my family are not Catholic. So, and then just having everybody that had been there for my dad's funeral was there for my final vows. And that was just really beautiful, and kind of seeing like, just another reminder, like this world is not what we're made for. We're made for heaven. Both my dad's funeral and my final vows, point to that. Like, we're made for bigger things. So God just really gave me a huge grace that day. I think I wasn't nervous at all. Like, I just was really like, this is it. This is what I've been waiting for. All my other years, I was always nervous. This is, one more year. Like, this is crazy. Like, what am I doing? but God gives grace, like, just to be able to say, yeah, this is it. This is for all my life. And, really just beautiful. And then the sisters that were there and our community that was there, it was, such a gift. So,
that's beautiful. And I think just it's a great story to hear of just sometimes God gives what you want. And
he does.
If your wills align, it's just a great time.
It is so great. We won't talk about the other times.
So going into the vows, I know some communities only take one of the 3 evangelical counsels of poverty, chastity, and obedience, and then the other 2 are just implied. And so do you all take explicitly poverty, chastity, and obedience?
We do. Yeah. So we take all 3 vows. Some other communities actually add a 4th vow, like if you're cloistered, they just, to stay in the, I don't remember what it's called. There's a term for it. And then, or to work with the poor, like Mother Teresa's community has a 4th vow specifically to work with the poor. But we have the 3: poverty, chastity, and obedience. So
out of all 3 of them, which one do you find is the hardest? Because most people on the outside are just chastity so hard. And then sometimes you just hear obedience is hard. And then others are just saying all 3 are just hard. Depends on the day. So
yeah, I would say that all 3 depends on the day. Probably, I think in general, what would be obedience, probably, in the sense of, like, I have to die to my will. And so I'm dying to my own will, which that covers chastity, and that covers poverty as well. Just that death to what I desire. There again, like I just shared, a lot of times God is just generous and allows our desires to line up with his. But just to choose him over me every day, that can be the difficult, challenging one.
So do you have any suggestions for people who are just looking to enter religious life to kind of just prepare themselves to live the vows out while they're still in the laity?
Yeah, well, it's one of those, like, I think we're called to live the vows. Well, we are called to live the vows, whatever our vocation is. And so to do that today, but also not to rob yourself of, this is who where God has you right now. I remember when I was a volunteer and I was meeting with my spiritual director, and I was just lamenting, like, I knew it was called. Why, as I entered, I should have entered 5 years ago. That's the way my brain works. Like, I should have all the shoulds, like, I should be doing this. And he stopped me and he's like, wait, if you die today, God isn't going to say, what kind of sister were you? He's going to say, how did you live today? Like, how did you live today? Well, and that's always stayed with me. Like, we tend to be, as humans, looking to the future or looking to the past, and then to live in the present moment of, okay, I'm going to live today well. I'm going to be the saint that God strive to be the saint that God's calling me to be today, whatever that looks like. And I think that prepares you better for vocation and whatever vocation is, because you're going to strive to have a prayer life. You're going to strive to be generous with others and strive to live charity and all those things, to live a sacramental life. And that prepares you there again for whatever your vocation is. And there again, I think, but staying rooted in the sacraments, confession and mass as frequently as possible really prepares you better than anything you can, like, do in that sense of, I got to read all the books, I got to do all these things. Like, no, it's just be who God's calling you to be today and live a sacramental life, and let God take care of the rest.
Yeah, I think so many people, including myself, just think I need to be doing a lot instead of just remembering the basics of just, I should probably go to confession, or mass is a pretty good idea. Let's go to mass today.
Exactly.
So kind of one of the biggest questions I find that people just ask in general is just, what is the difference between a sister and a nun? Because
Mhm.
whenever people that I know that were in Catholic school, just everybody was a nun.
Right.
It's like, were they? I don't know. So kind of just, what are the differences between just a sister and a nun?
Yeah, a lot of people use the words interchangeably, and I don't bother
Mhm.
to correct people when they do, because the nun, I think it does help. Like they have some sort of frame of reference if they're using the word nun, they've seen it in a movie or something. So at least it's an introductory point. The technical differences is that a nun is cloistered and a sister is not. So cloistered sister or cloistered nun is someone that they also live the three vows, but they, instead of being like we're apostolic, contemplative apostolic, so we work, so we might be teachers or working in nursing or different, things during the day. A cloistered sister, her work is prayer, and so she stays actually in the cloister. They don't leave the convent, and then their work is to pray for us. So that's the difference with a nun, and yeah, so they don't leave. Sisters do. So
Gotcha. Yeah, it's a very just simple difference. I think that
yeah,
some people are just like, what's the difference? It's like,
right.
nuns
Yeah.
don't leave, sisters do.
Right.
um, yeah, and so kind of just, what's an average day look like for you? Because some orders are just strict on, you got to pray the liturgy hours at the time the liturgy the hours
Mhm.
go. And so what does an average day look like for you?
So we pray the liturgy of the hours. So I can say if we went to all of our missions, you would see similarities, but the times would be different.
Okay.
It depends on, basically our schedules kind of depend on what the apostolic work is. So what you would see at all of our missions, the sisters, we go to daily mass. We have a daily holy hour. We pray the liturgy of the hours. So we pray office of readings, morning prayer, midday prayer, evening prayer, night prayer. Most of those are in common. Occasionally, usually daytime prayer is not in common because we're in our apostolic works. And so we just, wherever you are, just stop and take that 5 minutes and pray daytime prayer. We pray a daily rosary. There again, most of the times in common, sometimes it's not. Our constitutions are written that in times of charity that you don't have to pray one of those in common. We still pray it, but we don't have to pray it in common. Um, so if it's like there again, depending on our apostolic work or whatever the needs are of the mission, because we're a contemplative active community, depends on what of those prayers are prayed in common. But the majority of them are prayed in common. And then we would have our apostolic work. So there again, our community is unique in that in our charism, we work in the areas of deepest apostolic needs. So we're not just teachers or nurses, which are some communities. We do whatever the bishop needs us to do in the diocese where we serve. So in Phoenix, where I was serving before, we have a parish, so the priests run the parish and the sisters work in the school or youth ministry or catechesis. In here, I'm in Corpus Christi, Texas, and we have sisters that are working in administrations where headquarters are, sisters that are working there again, youth ministry, or we have a hospital chaplaincy. We have several parishes that the priests run, and with that, the sisters help with youth ministry or catechesis. The sisters are in a school here also in town. But there again, you will go to our mission in Mexico where we serve. It's a boarding school. And so the sisters are like the house moms at night. And so they're taking care of the kids and when they come back from school. And so their prayer life is going to be, their times are going to be a little bit different than say ours here in Corpus. So it just depends, but those are the kind of the threads of, you would see these same things just at different times. So depending on whatever the works are. So
is that like in the constitutions that just everybody, it's just daily mass, liturgy hours, and holy hour?
yeah, and as much in common as we can. So we, at the beginning of the year, whoever the house servant is of the local mission sends the schedule to our regional servant, so our regional superior, and then she's like approves it and says, okay, yeah, this is great, and so she has all the pieces, and sees everybody's schedule. So because it's praying together is very important, is to be like we were talking about earlier, that communal aspect of our life is so integral to who we are as human beings, that we need to be praying together too. So
yeah, and I think that's just so much more important for a community of just sit down conversations are great, but also the community should be praying together, because that's just where you grow in that spiritual bond with one another, and truly just dive more in a holy love for each other and zeal for holiness for each other.
For sure. Yeah.
So kind of like wrapping things up, talking about just advice that you have for women just who are looking to enter or just looking into religious life. What kind of just resources, videos, books, talks could you like kind of point them to, or just practical advice that you have for them?
Practical advice, I think, would be what I was saying earlier, is just to have that faithful prayer life of confession, regular confession, daily mass as often as possible. And there again, building that relationship with the Lord will help bring to light what your vocation is. And so that's foundational. I think really important is getting to know communities. So visiting communities if possible. And there are so many amazing resources that we have at our fingertips today of videos and talks and all those things. But I think actually spending time with the community is best case scenario, if possible. And then in general, I think, and not just playing it because that's what our community does, but there's so many options out there, is to spend a year in mission and just to give a year back to the Lord, who's given so much to us. And I think, at least even looking at my life, like I learned so much in that year of mission that prepared me, no matter, particularly from a vocation as a sister, but I have friends that did that too when we served a mission, who are married, and they would point to the same thing, that it's so formative because you're giving a year specifically to God to be in service to him, and he gives us so much back in return. He really, at least for me, like I learned how to serve. I learned how to really give of myself in that generosity that we're called to. So I would encourage that, whatever. There are so many groups out there that offer, mission work for a year. And I know for myself, like I would hear the word mission and I'd hear the word missionary, and I was like, oh, that's scary. I'm not called to that. But there are plenty of local, like there's places in the United States, there's, you can go to the exotic missions like Belize, but there's plenty of local places too that offer that, net and all those different ways that God has given to give back to him. So
for sure. Yeah. And I think those are better advice than I could ever give, because can't be a sister. Thumbs up. But thank you so much for just taking the time to get these questions answered. That kind of had that I think young women would ask, or anything like that. So
happy to.